I'm sitting with Briat, and we are looking at Samkhya Yoga, and we're going to go through the distinctions of what it all means.
Alright, but before I start, I just want to distinguish between the two different types of Sankhya. Actually, this particular Sankhya we're going to describe is, because there are two systems of Sankhya, and both of them were spoken by a person called Kapila. And this particular Sankhya that we're talking about here is actually a atheistic Sankhya, because they're not describing actually an absolute transcendental nature. They're just purely talking about the material realm.
So it's neutral.
It's completely neutral. Like there's no God, there's no divinity.
Yeah, let's not speak it that way. Let's speak it as there's God. So add that in as you need to, because I believe in creation.
Okay. So at the end, I'll point that out.
Okay.
So, but it's still an amazing system, and I really got into it because it does describe a lot of things really well.
Okay.
And then the other Sankhya was spoken. So the Sankhya which we're kind of talking about was a couple thousand years ago, and the Sankhya spoken by the other Kapila, which is actually an avatar of Vishnu, which is in ancient histories of India. So it's eons ago. So be that as it may, so this particular Sankhya.
So
which
let me ask you a question
yeah.
before you go there, because I read in some places that they talk about Samkhya Yoga is dualistic, and in some places it's non-dualistic. So is that the distinction there between the neutral and not neutral?
No. So this Sankhya we're going to discuss is dualism, and the other Sankhya we're discussing is actually, I would say, preliminary stage of Bhakti Yoga, where they give a lot of the same information, but
we are talking about, because it has to be, if there's a creation and everything is everything, then there has to be non-dualism at some point. Please speak that one as well.
Okay, so what I'll do is, I'm going to discuss this Sankhya, and at the end I'm going to show out some of the shortcomings of it.
Okay,
and
good.
in that way, from our experience and our understanding and our paths, we're just going to complete on it.
Okay, good.
Because it's definitely not complete.
Because it's incomplete
in and of itself.
for me if you don't. Okay.
Yeah, it is incomplete, but still very powerful. So the dualism is that they say all that exists are these two substances called Purusa and Prakruti, which one could say the Purusa is the masculine and the Prakruti would be the feminine quality. So in another way, in Sanskrit, Purusa also means the controller or the master or enjoyer, and Prakriti means the energy or the nature. So now
let me jump in while I'm there. It's just that
okay.
how it's been spoken to me as well is one is the spirit in everything, and the other one is the spirit that is in nature or in species or in man. Is
okay.
that
yeah, it's kind of parallel.
Okay, good.
So we're going to start talking about the principles of Purusa and Prakriti, which is basically the Sankhya is based on these principles itself, not necessarily on understanding what the substance is, but more understanding what the principles they represent. So the Purusa has the qualities of consciousness, but it is unmanifest, it's formless, it's passive, it has no attributes, and there's no cause or effect within it, and there's no cause or effect beyond it either. And whereas the Prakriti,
which also could be said as it just is.
Yeah, so it just is. It's something that is not manifest, but it is conscious. So the Prakriti, so the Purusa would be like the spiritual, I would say, conscious, like light, you could say. Where Prakriti does not possess any consciousness, but it's the creative force in everything. It's the varieties. It's all this, and it is manifest. So originally, according to the Sankhya, there is a perfect balance between the Purusa and the Prakriti. And in this balance, there's this perfect union between the two. So there's no distinguishing between the Purusa and the Prakriti. So in this way, there's kind of not dualism, but still, by principles, there's still these two separate elements which are mixed together in an unidentifiable way, indistinguishable, as one, exactly.
And also the symbol that in this particular model is of the infinity symbol.
I see, yes. So then, there is also what is called the three gunas, and they're called triguna. Guna means quality. So they're referred to as sattva, raja, and tamagun, which we can translate sattva meaning goodness, rajas meaning passion, and tamas meaning ignorance. So what these gunas are, one can compare them to the primary colors. You have red, you have yellow, and you have blue. So, and the mixture of these three colors, they make the whole spectrum of light, which we know.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
That's an excellent analogy, because everybody's got their own mixture, so their own colors.
Yes, exactly. So similarly, these three gunas, sattva, raja, and tamas, the mixture of them manifest everything in this creation.
Yes.
From physical things to moods to temperaments
and
to your digestion to like
in every action is
everything.
There's a mixture. There is a representation of these three energies,
and they're influencing everything.
Yes, just to pull the energies out a little bit more of Sattva is anything that's good, the things that you're enjoying. Good food, when it's food, it's good food, it's wholesome food. If it's food in the rajas, it would be spicy food.
Yeah.
And in tamas, it would be food that came out of the garbage bin.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit green, it might not be, so good for you.
Yeah.
But there's also, like, some of the things that I found interesting is that there's times that where tamas is useful, is, for example, is that when you're sleeping, is tamas. There's times that you're doing all of these things, but it doesn't mean that it's negative.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean that it's just, and also it's the destruction of, so that there's a rebirth can also happen.
Yeah.
So all of those three things are happening. There's just not, goodness rushing around and then stuff that you don't want.
So one can give the primary attributes for goodness. For sattva would be maintenance. For passion or rajas would be creation. And for tamas or ignorance, it would be annihilation or destruction. And these three influences are everywhere. And in any given time, place or circumstance, one of them will always predominate the rest, but the influence of all three of them are always present.
At all times.
Yes. So now to go back to this Purusa.
Before you
Prakruti,
do that, I just want to do one more illustration of this, is that the three incarnations of creation are represented in each one of these three. So I'll go through what the three are, and then you tell me where they go.
Okay.
So there's Brahma, there's Vishnu, and there's don't tell me, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva.
Yes.
So what are the expressions, and how do those incarnations of creation fit in the gunas?
So Brahma, he's in charge or controlling the mode of passion, rajas. So he's the engineer of the universe, according to the Vedic mythology, and he's been given all these building blocks of the universe, and also the knowledge how to create, and then he creates this thing. And then Vishnu, he takes charge of mode of goodness, the sattva gun, with the maintaining potency, and he maintains this whole universe. And then at the end, there's partial devastations between ages, or also the complete devastation at the end of the lifetime of this universe.
There's always entropy.
Yes,
no matter what it is,
exactly.
There's entropy. Nothing...
So then there's Shiva, who takes charge of the mode of ignorance, tamagun, and then the universe is destroyed. So on a cosmic scale, that's how the universe is made, maintained and destroyed. And then similarly on a more micro scale, it is how an individual is born into a particular body. That's the mode of passion. And the maintenance, the mode of goodness, is maintaining that body. And at the end, when he dies, then there's a mode of ignorance, which predominates that life. But in the life also, in different aspects of life, these three modes are also acting on us. Like if you get into depression, it's due to influence of passion. If you get into really working like really hard and just like money, this is the influence of passion. Or if you're a person who's really into a simple holistic life, really like present-minded and grounded, it's because this person lives a lifestyle which is promoting more influence of sattva gun. So this is just like a brief kind of, and in different ways, like your diet will reflect what modes you're being influenced by.
Yes, and what color you are. That's virtually what it comes down to.
Exactly.
Okay.
So now with the Purusa and the Prakriti, when there is this union between the two, there's a perfect balance between these three modes. And because there's a perfect balance between them, nothing is manifest. And everything is in perfect equilibrium and harmony. And then, according to the Sankhya, what happens is, the Purusa desires to experience itself, because it can distinguish itself from anything else because of this intimate union with the Prakriti. So then what happens is, it disturbs the balance of these gunas. And in disturbing that, the Prakriti becomes manifest. and then all this, the creation happens, and the Purusha enters the unmanifested conscious, manifests or enters into this unconscious material creation, the Prakruti, in this creation where the Gunas have been disturbed.
Yes.
So when it enters into there is, in order to interact in that world, there is what's called the Mahat, or the Buddhi it's also referred to, which is the intelligence. And it's said that, and through the Mahat, one develops an identity of false I. So you think you're something you're not. You think that I'm this body, I'm this mind, I'm this intelligence.
So since the words that I put with that is creation wants an experience of self.
Yes.
So that's where the intellect, the intelligence is created, and because you become into this physical world and have a body and a mind, you
get that identity,
the ego identity that fools you into I'm this I, I'm this body.
Yes, exactly. So so the ahankar is actually an energy. It's like how we have the 5 elements: wind, water, fire, earth, and ether. Then you also have 3 subtle elements called mano, buddhi, and ahankar, which form part of one's astral body.
Okay.
And then the 5 elements form part of the gross physical body. And ahankar is the most subtle of the elements, and it's basically, I describe it as, it's the software necessary for you to be able to have a misidentification. So it's what makes
that's very well said.
Yeah. Actually. So that the dog thinks I'm a dog,
yes,
and therefore I have to bark at the cat.
Yes.
Or the guy thinks I'm a man, therefore I have to run after a woman,
yes,
or I have to run after another
yes,
man if you're so inclined.
Yes.
Then so basically, and that's because of the ahankar, and the way in Sankhya which that's explained is that the Purusha, it's projecting like a lamp its light into the Mahat, into the intelligence, which is like a mirror. And because of identification of it, this mirror also reflects the light back to the Purush, and in that way the Purush is experiencing itself as if it is the Buddhi, as if it is the intelligence. And the intelligence through the ego is connected to the subtle body, the astral body, which is in turn connected to the physical body, which is in turn possessing all these different elements or senses. Yeah, and there's actually describing 25 senses, which they're not just looking at the senses.
Are you saying there's 25 senses here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they're not just looking at smelling and touching and seeing, but they're also looking at speech, at walking, at working, at speaking is also considered, it's like the active senses. So you have 5 knowledge acquiring senses, which is smelling, tasting, seeing. You have 5 active senses, which are considered to be like the ones of speech, of motor functions, of like defecation.
Yes.
These are all active.
Yeah, excreting.
Yes, and then you have the 5 elements,
yes,
which are like the earth, fire, ether, and water, yes,
and earth.
Yeah, so there's 15.
Yes.
And then you have another 5. Am I forgetting one now? Oh, and then you have the 5 senses themselves, which are related to the eyes, the nose, the mouth.
Yes.
And then you also have consciousness. You have the mind. You have the intelligence. You have the false ego. Yeah.
And all of these, the work that I do with Sankhya Yoga is really how do we create our reality. It's a very small section of the Samkhya Yoga, and it's virtually, but it's just really brought it down to the practice of what's the least amount of information that you know to be able to create more joy in your life is what it comes down to.
So yeah, so these 25 elements, they manifest out of a combination of these 3 gunas. And there are different opinions on which ones come from which, but I think that's not really so important, at least to understand that due to the mixture or the disturbance of the balance of sattva, raja, and tamas,
yes,
these 25 elements are manifesting, which provide the vessel for the misidentification,
yes,
of the soul with the intelligence which is connected to the subtle and the physical
How
body.
we talk about that in yoga is that you fine-tune your senses to be able to discover the subtle body. So you're using the senses, the mind and the body, so to be able to identify the subtle body. So you're using the senses of the mind and the body to determine what's in time and space, to be able to determine what is beyond time and space in the subtle body.
Yes.
So, and it's an interesting paradox again, is everything that you used to think was real would be in time and space, and when what you find out what you truly are is beyond time and space, and the subtle body is the doorway to being able to discover what that is, and the divinity beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I like a lot about this, about Sankhya, is how it explains how an eternal spiritual being seemingly becomes encaged in a temporary material experience. And it's explained nicely how through this reflection of its consciousness into the intelligence and back creates this misidentification. So what happens is something happens to the senses which relays the information like a receptor towards the mind, and that mind is either giving it a label good or bad, and then the intelligence is actually experiencing it and having this experience like this is happening to me. Now when the Purusa, the individual living being or the soul, is misidentified with the intelligence, it thinks it's happening to me, but in fact it's happening to the intelligence. And then there's another school of Sankhya which suggests that no, the intelligence doesn't reflect back to the Purusa. The Purusa just illuminates the Mahat or the Buddhi, which in my opinion is actually what the point one gets to when one has actually become spiritually awakened. When one understands, I am not the Buddhi. And then you just observe the Buddhi and what's happening to it. And that way then you reflect.
Define the Buddhi again?
Which is the Mahat, the intelligence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you have more than one word for that. Okay.
So then in that way you're not being influenced by the false ego, the ahankar, to think that I am this Buddhi, this intelligence. And then, but at the same time, I'm still connected to it, but because I know this is not me, I can simply observe what is happening to my body and my mind.
And I can learn and see past it.
Exactly.
And the point of it is, like, and from my experience, is that the creation wants to have an experience of self. And there's an interruption on the energy that everything is. And that into the intellect and into the ego. And you use that there's the software that is required to have a misidentification that you actually are this body and that you're in this world, subject and object, and that you're giving these senses to be able to experience that world, to be able to taste and enjoy and see and learn and experience what's going on around you. But ultimately, yoga is being able to identify the fact that you aren't this body, and you look then you go back to the subtle body. Is the window where you actually start seeing your divinity and that you are back to the whole. So you're back. So it's full circle.
It's even going that I'm not the subtle body even. Yeah, because the subtle body is made of the mind and the intelligence and the false ego. And I'm not even that. It's closer to what I am, but it's still
keep
not
going
what I
then.
am.
It might be words. It might be word differences. So keep going.
Yeah, so
what are we then?
What we are, we eternal spiritual beings. We are the consciousness.
That is what the subtle body for me is that we start experiencing, because it's not in time and space. I start experiencing.
But the subtle body is still in duality. Where the consciousness
No, not for me it isn't.
If the subtle body, like if you have an out-of-body experience, there's still good and bad energies, higher and lower vibrations.
No, that's not, I see it as the subtle. Oh yeah, it can still be in duality.
That's the astral body.
Yes,
which is made up of those two things.
No, I just skipped the astral. I just keep going. I didn't stop there. It was just really, as soon as I saw myself as energy, and I saw myself. The subtle body started appearing, so I started seeing I wasn't my body. So then I didn't make anything up that I didn't think it was bad. I could actually immediately see that my subtle body was connected to everything as everything. And it was divine, and that I'm divine and perfect in that creation. So duality stopped there for me. So, okay, I didn't even know we could stop for duality there, so that's interesting. Okay, so when you had some distinctions there of the astral body and
the physical body.
Okay. Yeah. And virtually the astral body is just the same distinctions, except you're not the body, but you still live in duality.
It's like an ethereal form that you have.
Yeah.
And accessing dimensions beyond the third.
Yeah, I don't even go there. I just go straight to divinity.
Yeah, there's no need to go there.
Yeah, I didn't, which is interesting. It's interesting. It was even, I didn't know it was a landing pad that you could actually take.
Many people get stuck there.
Yeah.
Especially people who take like psychedelics or like DMT. That experience they have of the astral body They think it's a spiritual body, but it's not.
Okay.
The spiritual body is even more subtle because it's still a realm where they're good and bad beings.
Okay. Yes.
So that can't be the spiritual.
Yeah, I don't believe in those either, and that there's lots of people that do. Okay, so that's really quite interesting. Anything else in so? Just to reiterate for me that the use of Samkhya yoga for me on a day-to-day field is how to deal with the software that is used to have a misidentification of self. That we're actually a body in this world, and
these things aren't happening to us.
Yes,
they're happening to the body and the mind.
Yes,
but not to us.
Yeah, and that's the fact that it's illusionary, and that there's and just at the lowest level, you know, our fears, the fears that we keep creating, being able to see them for what they are and be able to create outside of that, knowing what your divinity is. So, anything else you want to say about Samkhya Yoga? Anything you want to say about this being non-dualistic? What would you add to it to have it be non-dualistic?
Well, it's pretty dualistic, but I think the shortcoming of it is that the basic premise that the Purusa wanted to experience its separatedness or its own individuality, and it had to separate itself from the Prakruti. But the problem with that is that if that event had to have happened, then that means every conscious living being had to come to a consensus that, okay, we want to do this now. Because otherwise, how is it that, let's say, you wanted to do it, but I didn't want to do it, but now I'm being implicated in that?
Yes.
So there's no history in any, or no recording in any ancient history of such an event ever taking place. So, and also why we're referring to ancient histories is because Sankhya accepts the Vedas as authorized and bona fide and authentic.
Yes.
So therefore, we can actually say none of the Puranas are showing that this event happened, and therefore, so it's not complete. And that actually indicates that there then has to be a supreme cause beyond the Purusa and the Prakruti, by whose desire these things are actually manifested. Which in that way, which is more the divine thing than coming in, that there is actually a supreme divine, which exists beyond these two, and due to that desire and the grand plan or whatever he had, set all these things in motion, and then the individual living beings could actually come enter, and then in the fashion that we described.
Okay.
Which is more in line with yoga philosophy.
So what would you say, you're drawing another circle above these two, and what would you be calling that?
I would just call it, well, whatever you want to refer the source as.
How do you, the source?
Yeah.
That's a really good, I think that's an excellent place to actually end our Samkhya talk, is that the circle at the very top above the two energies is the source.
And the source has nothing to do with any of this.
Yes, this is an expression. Yes.
It's an expression.
Yes. Thank you very much once again,
Thank you.
Priyat.